Joshua chapter 3. We're ready for Joshua. I hope to finish Joshua 3 and 4 tonight. I don't think I will. We'll try. We'll try. All right. Anything exciting happen? Anything we need to know about? Because when I leave town, I really leave town. I don't think too well anyway. So, all right. If I were to ask you this evening, what is faith? What is faith? Anybody got a clue? Trust. Very true. you know, you know, you know. I really, when I thought about that first part of the week or the end of last week, maybe I should have said excluding Hebrews 11. But it's a great one. Faith is more, just by those two definitions, is more than the collection of facts. You know, a lot of folks think that, I'll step back a little bit so y'all don't have strain to see. A lot of folks think that faith is just a collection of facts. And that's not faith. Faith is trust, substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In Joshua chapters 3 and 4, we see faith put into action. They're making preparation to go across the Jordan River. Now, remember, let's just kind of quickly remember, children of Israel, Egyptian bondage, 430 years. They get out, but they don't get to cross. And so there's 40 years in the wilderness. Joshua Moses has died. Joshua has been commissioned to lead the children of Israel. And he's right at that point. They're right. Well, they're within miles of crossing the Jordan River, getting over into the promised land, finally getting to the land that God had told them. There's a lot of juicy little things in chapters 3 and 4, and yet when we look at it kind of just from a standpoint of just glancing at it, we don't think a lot about it. But there's a lot of little juicy things. Look at verse 1. We see one of the juicy things. Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Asea Grove, Shittim, and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged before they crossed over. So they're there. They set out they're at Asea or Shittim, which is about 10 miles away from the Jordan River. But they get to the Jordan River. But the interesting little tidbit, if you will, is that Joshua rose early. I had thought about it and kind of got to thinking about it. 4 people that come to mind that rose early to do God's work. Hezekiah was one of them. David was one. Moses was the other. And Jesus was the other. To rise early you can't always interpret that phraseology about the way we're going to interpret it. But in many places in the Old Testament, when you see the phrase rose early, it's the idea of they're zealous. They're zealous. They're eager. Well, literally, they rise early. Now, you have early risers, you have late risers. You know, I'm not a real early riser, but earlier than my wife. If she has her way, she'd rather sleep in. I'd rather get up. To rise up early, though, well, there's a lot going on. There's a journey that's going to have to be taken, and since they're 10 miles away, you got to understand, for them, that would be a half a day's journey. 20 miles was considered a day's journey. And so you can imagine getting everybody, so to speak, okay, here we go. we're gonna take on this journey. And notice though that he gets them there, and they lodged before they cross over. And so it was after 3 days that the officers went through the camp. 3 days. They sit there 3 days. Some have said that there was a day of journey, a day of rest, and then the third day the orders come. And that may be so. Some have looked at it from the standpoint they went to the Jordan River, they lodged there, and they were there 3 days, actually 3 days just resting. And so it says that after they were there 3 days, or after 3 days, depending upon how you look at it and the version you use, the officers decide to go through the camp and see what's going on, and they commanded the people. See, they're beginning to bark out orders. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests and the Levites bearing it, excuse me, my southern came out, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. So here's the command, the Ark of the Covenant. What was so important about that ark? Represented God, and it was also what? The place where they considered God to be sitting, the mercy seat. And so it represented God, the presence of God. And the ark was important. Now notice a couple of things, just as a reminder. It says, you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priest and the Levites. Now, in order to be a priest, you had to be from what tribe? Levi. But if you were a Levite, you were not necessarily a priest. So that's why it says priest and Levites. Who carried the Ark of the Covenant? Well, yeah, one time. Yeah, that's true. But the priests, they were responsible for. They were the only ones. Remember, if you go back into the book of Exodus, is the account I like best. It's a little bit more simple than the book of Leviticus. But you have the Ark of the Covenant, this, if you will, if you let me kind of oversimplify, a box, if you will, angels, cherubims, sitting sort of believed to be backwards, their wings touch, kind of makes a seat, often said to be the mercy seat, the seat where God sits. What was in the ark, do you remember? Manna, Ten Commandments, rod that budded. There we go. We got it all. Good. The ark itself, made out of shittim wood, overlaid in gold, had a ring on each corner, a staff or rod or pole, whatever, however you want to call it, was placed through those rings, and only the priest could carry it. Why the command to stay, as it says, 2,000 cubits away? I'm not real sure. But maybe it was so that they wouldn't touch it. Maybe it was so that the glory of God could be pronounced before them. In other words, they're going before. Maybe it was due to the fact that the waters are going to part on the Jordan River. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And, excuse me. And so there had to be a little distance. I don't know exactly why. When you think about 2,000 cubics, I looked at it and converted it. That's, I think, about 3,000 feet. One guy said that it's 3/5 of a mile. I did not convert it to that, but I was reading where he said 3/5 of a mile, about 3,000 feet. And so a great distance, really. And they were to stay away from it. That was the command. But notice the last little bit of verse 4. For you have not passed this way before. This is a new adventure. This is somewhere where you haven't gone, somewhere where their forefathers hadn't gone either in years. And so, but the idea is you've not passed this way before. Think about that, just that phraseology being true in life. When you wake up tomorrow, you haven't passed that way before. Tomorrow's a new day. A new year, I've preached that phraseology with the idea of a new year. You've not passed this way before. This is a new year, new start. You get to take off. Well, that's just a simple reminder there for them that the ark is going before. Do what you're told to do. You've not gone this way before. But with, in essence, the ark leading them, God leading you. God's going to lead you to where you should go and into the promised land. And so Joshua, verse 5, said to the people, sanctify yourself, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant and cross over before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. Notice or look at what he says. Sanctify, consecrate, set apart yourself. When we become Christians, we're sanctified. True or false? The answer is true. But at the same time, too, we have to sanctify ourselves as well, right? We have to set apart ourselves. It's not just that God sets us apart, we set apart ourselves. And so here, when Joshua commands the people, he's saying, sanctify yourselves, get prepared, get ready, consecrate yourself. You set yourself apart. You're fixing to take on a huge service. Get ready. But notice what he says. I like the next phrase. The Lord will do wonders among you. This is a message to the people. The Lord's going to do wonders among you. Well, we know. We've read the story before, so this is not, I'm not breaking ground here. News. The water's going to part. Well, now, they should have heard of the stories. Now, remember, everybody that was how old and up did not get to go into the promised land. 20 years and older, except for Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb got to enter because of their faith. Go back to Numbers 13, Numbers 14. Preached a sermon on that a couple of weeks ago, and so we'll not go over that. But everybody else that was older passed away, but the younger ones probably heard the story of crossing over the Red Sea, or the sea there, the Pharaoh and his army coming after him. And so, lo and behold, they probably knew the story. But when Joshua says, the Lord will do wonders among you. Now, they've been fed, if you will, daily. They've heard the stories. And they're promised. The Lord's going to do great things before you. It reminds us really as well, really of all of us. Much of what was discussed this week at the lectureship at Freed-Hardeman, there were basically 2 or 3 prevalent ideas in a lot of the talks. But one of the prevalent talks, it was about the books of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. That was the study. One of the prevalent themes running through a lot of the sermons, that's very true, is the care, the protection, the providence of God. You see it in those 3 books tremendously. Just a theme that runs through them. And that's what we should remember. But that's what Joshua wanted the people to remember. The Lord will do wonders among you. The Lord's going to take care of you. This is each day you're going to be blessed, and the Lord's going to take care of you. And so Joshua then talked to the priest, and he told them, take up the ark, cross over before the temple. Now, it took courage for them to do their job. Because one of the things we see a little later on is the Jordan River is flooded. And you watched floodwaters. Floodwaters, when things flood, the water runs swift, right? Water runs deeper, swifter, and there's discussion over exactly how wide it was, even when it's outside of its banks. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But these folks, these priests, are told, you go, you take the ark, You go across and you go before the people. And the Lord said to Joshua, this day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that you may know that as I was with Moses, so I'll be with you. You shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when you come to the edge of the water of the Jordan, you shall stand in the Jordan. Now, here's the message that the Lord told Joshua. Basically, go. You're going to be exalted. I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel so that you will be seen as great. The idea of exalting means to make great. I'm going to make you great. And he says, just like I was with Moses, I'm going to be with you, which is the promise that he made when we studied the first chapter a couple of weeks ago in his commission. So he tells him that again. And he says, look what verse 8 says, you shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant. When you come to the edge of the water of the Jordan, you shall stand in the Jordan. So he tells Joshua, go tell the priests, take the ark and go stand in the Jordan River. Faith. You see, it's trust. Substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. We're going to venture out. The Lord's promised, going to do great things. Going to do great things. And so now the priests, they have to carry the Ark of the Covenant. Now this represents God. And basically Joshua is going to tell them, go out into the Jordan River. And the Jordan River is not just some sweet little babbling brook at this point in time. So it's a matter of faith. It's a matter of courage. So Joshua said to the children of Israel, come here, hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will, without fail, drive out from before you the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Jebusites. Notice who he puts his focus on. Verse 10, you shall know that the living God is among you, and he'll not fail. The living God, he will without fail drive out your enemies. So his emphasis is not, hey, look what you're going to do, and look how you're going to take care of this, or look how this is going to take place. Look how God's going to take care of this for you. God's going to be before you, and God's going to be among you, and God will make sure that he drives out all of your enemies. So verse 11, behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over before you into the Jordan. Now, therefore, take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one man from every tribe. And it shall come to pass as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off, the waters that come down from upstream, and they shall stand as a heap. Get out, get into the water, carry the ark. But notice what he says. He says, I want 12 men, one from each tribe. And what are they going to do? Well, he says, as comes to pass, as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark, what's going to happen? The waters are going to pass. Waters are going to stand back. They're going to be cut off. Faith. Now, a little later on, we'll see these 12 guys are going to pick up stones and they're going to deliver them as memorial. We'll talk about that here in the next chapter. But so it was that when the priests set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan, the priests bearing the ark of the covenant for the people, and as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priest who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the water of the Jordan, for the Jordan overflows all its banks during the whole time of harvest, that the waters which came down from upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far at Adam, the city that is beside Zaretan, which is believed to have been about 20 miles upstream, about 20 miles away. So the waters that went down into the sea of Arabah, the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people crossed over opposite Jericho. Now, Jericho doesn't necessarily sit right on the Jordan River. So it's a little ways off. But nevertheless, you get the picture. The picture is the priests are going to go, and as soon as they put their feet in the water's going to divide. When it divides, it, like say, it held back some 10 miles or 20 miles upstream, if you will, and you're going to be able to cross. And sure enough, the waters failed. People crossed over opposite Jericho. The priest who bore the ark, this is verse 17, who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all of Israel crossed over on dry ground until all the people had crossed completely over Jordan. Well, what do you see? Excuse me. You see the power of God. The power that God has to separate, if you will, the waters, to allow the folks to cross. And every time I read this, I'm always struck by what it says in the text. They passed over on dry ground. Now, water off the hill comes down in my yard. Eventually, it makes its way to the ditch and eventually on out. But I noticed Saturday, I had in a couple of places that I have that are extremely low, I still had ponding water Saturday and still had it Sunday. It had been a few days since we'd gotten water, but as it drains and as it runs, as everything dries up, and until we have really the drying period of July, August, September, and October in there, there'll be times when it'll rain and it'll hold water for a little while, and because that's where it drains. And so like Saturday when I was out there, I had to be careful where I walked. It was muddy. These people walked across on dry land, and the waters had just been held up. It wasn't muddy. They didn't mire up. They didn't have mud up to their knees. They passed through on dry ground. It's the power of God. And we walk away and we look at the 3rd chapter and we say, why did God put that there? Well, he's telling us the story of Israel. And he's trying to get Israel, if you will, in the stories he's telling it, from the wilderness into the land of Canaan, into the land of promise. And he's doing that so that we'll see this story. But he's showing us power that he has. He's showing us his ability. He's showing us his might. And he's also showing us these individuals that by faith, they went, they did as God told them to do, and sure enough, God took care of them. And it reminds us that by faith, we are the same thing. So before I open it up for questions or comments, we make 2 applications. First of all, one of the things that we might learn from this chapter that would be good for us, that is, claim your inheritance. Claim your inheritance. They should claim their inheritance. Get over into the promised land. Claim what God has promised you. Claim what God has given you. Those that started out on the journey did not get to get in there. Those that had waited, think about waiting all of those years, and during those 40 years, I think Ken and I was talking about somebody, I believe it was Ken and I were talking about, during those 40 years, there's a lot of funerals, folks, as they were passing away. And yet, by faith, they claimed their inheritance. They finally got to cross over the Jordan River, those that were allowed to. They finally got to get into the land of promise that their fathers had been promised. The application for us is that the inheritance that we have, of course, is heaven itself. And we claim that by living the Christian life, by venturing out on faith as these folks did, by living a life of faith and doing the things that God would have us to do. But then a second lesson we might learn is that God delivers his people. God took care of these folks. This is not just another story. this is a story that helps us understand God delivered those people, He'll deliver us. God takes care of those people, He'll take care of us. And so it's what any other stories, any other things that you might want to bring up? Ah, yeah. Yeah. No, they don't. They don't. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
But they definitely tell you what caused the earthquake.
No. That's right. That's right. That's right.
This problem with the Red Sea. In the Red Sea, it said the water parts.
Yes.
And they walk all on one side and on the other side, and on this one, 10 miles upstream.
Yeah, it just dammed up, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder too. Don't know. No, no wind, no overnight. But think about it. If you think about it, they put their feet in. 20 miles up, it dams up. They cross dry land. What happened? Yeah, from where they were to where it dammed up. And did they have to wait? I don't know. I don't know. But did they have to wait for that water to pass and then for it to dry? So if I'm a skeptic, here's what I say. I'm not saying this is true, but if I'm a skeptic, I'm saying, you see, that had to take time. A time element that is not there. See, the skeptic wants to get, as Jay says, the skeptic wants to get rid of all the miracles of the Bible, all of them, because if we get rid of the miracles of the Bible, what do we get rid of? The power of God. And so if I'm a skeptic, I'm saying something to the, yeah, I'd never heard that one, but I'm glad to hear it now. Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. Uh, I didn't think to mention this. I'm just looking at my notes here. During a regular time, during like just regular season, not the harvest time, the Jordan River is about, well, probably or around the area where they crossed. It's about 100 feet wide. But during the flooding season, it can be as much as a mile wide. That's what, but that's kind of measurements for today. So we have to allow a little bit for that. But that's an interesting thought that it was that wide, a mile wide, let's just say a mile wide running because it's the flooding season. And so it's flowing south, but that's because of the contour of the land, by the way. Remember, you're not just oodles and bukus. Isn't that definite? You're not just a whole bunch of miles north of the Dead Sea. You are north of the Dead Sea, but you're not that many miles north of the Dead Sea. If that helps you in your geography. And so it's flowing from north to south, and it's just a matter of faith and the power of God. Anything else? Well, next you have memorials. I want to talk about. We'll begin. We won't be able to finish, but I want to talk about memorials to kind of. The first part of this is sort of self-explanatory. It says it came to pass when all the people had completely crossed over the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, "Take for yourselves 12 men from the people, one man from each tribe." Well, that makes sense. But now remember, a deal had been made already that some folks were going to stay on the east side of the Jordan River. But they also, remember, had to come across and do what? Fight. Right. But there was supposed to be, in this instance, a representative from each tribe, from all 12 tribes. And here was their charge, verse 2. Take for yourselves 12 men from the people, one man from every tribe, and command them, saying, take for yourselves 12 stones from here, out of the midst of the Jordan, from the place where the priest stood firm. I like the word firm, don't you? See, wasn't muddy. Firm. You shall carry them over with you and leave them in a lodging place where you lodge tonight. So their charge was pick up the stones, each a man from each tribe pick up stone. Now, I want to go back to the skeptic for a minute. The skeptic will say that everybody picked up a stone, because I've read this, that everybody picks up stone, but the reason for them picking up the stones were to weight themselves down so that they could get through because of the water. See, they want to explain away everything. That's the only reason I bring that up. I don't believe it. I don't think it's true, but that's what the skeptic says. But let's get back to fact and faith and what the Bible tells us. One man from each tribe had been designated. You pick up a stone out of the Jordan River. And it is believed that this was not just, a piece of gravel. Okay, larger stone. You pick up a stone and you take it to the place of lodging, wherever you're going to lodge tonight. You set those stones up and you set them in kind of a heap, would probably be the best way of saying it, where you lodge tonight. When the house that we owned in Dixon, I never understood it. And I really should have asked the guy, because I still know him, that we bought the house from. But in our backyard, we had, behind our outbuilding, there was just a big heap of stones of rock. I figure it was, they took them out of the way when they built the house. They took them out of the yard, and that's where they ended up. And they were still there. And I found stones and little stones and big stones, and I helped keep the heap going. It didn't sink, it didn't shrink. But they're to make a heap. And this heap is going to become a memorial. So Joshua called the 12 men, verse 4, whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, one man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, cross over before the ark of the Lord your God, and in the midst of the Jordan, each one of you take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in time to come, saying, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall answer them, the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it crossed over the Jordan. The waters of the Jordan were cut off, and these stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever. What memorial do we as Christians have? Lord's Supper. Every week we take the Lord's Supper. The Lord's Supper, we take that. I really think, and a lot of what I'm fixing to say about this, St. Paul finds scripture for it. Very hard. I think, though, that the Lord's Supper was given to us for us to be able to center our life each week, to get back to remembering and understanding what we've been given and what we have. And so each week, the early church did it. We're to do it as well. To gather together, to partake of the emblems, the bread, the fruit of the vine represents the body, the blood of Jesus Christ, so that we can center our lives back upon where it should be centered, upon the Lord. And so during the week, we have so many things going on and so many things demanding our time, our attention, and our efforts. And sometimes our focus gets screwed up. And so memorial brings us back, sort of recharges us for the next week. We have in this wireless mic, we have 2 batteries. We actually have 4 altogether in the office. We have 2. We take them out, put them in the charger, keep all 4 of them in the charger, but we'll take 2 out. We swap them out, put them back, get them recharged after they're used. The Lord's Supper, I believe, is to do the same for us. And that's why we really need to focus on it. We need to make sure that when we take the Lord's Supper, and I'm fixing to get off my soapbox, but I have a strong soapbox here. When we take the Lord's Supper, it's not just a matter of, man, ate that cracker, swallowed that juice, check, I got it off. We need to spend more time with the Lord's Supper, folks. We really do. And we need to focus. Suzanne will tell you this is a problem I have. It's pet peeve. It's one of my things. I think we need to focus more on the Lord's Supper. It's a memorial feast. It has a reason. It has a purpose. Okay, well, these stones, heaps, stones. Why? Well, in years to come, people are going to forget. But each time you go back over it, you remember, right? And you hear the story. And so children, 10, 20 years, come back and they see that heap of rocks. And they're going to say, well, what does it mean? And all of a sudden, then they're going to get a great history lesson, a great story. And you might say, well, it's just a history lesson of the children of Israel. It's going to show God's power, their faith in crossing the Jordan River, their lack of faith when they didn't get into the promised land years before, the care of God when God fed the manna in the wilderness. They're going to get to see all of this. They're going to get told all of this and reminded of all of this. And so it will be a memorial. And the children of Israel did so. Children of Israel did so, just as Joshua commanded, took up 12 stones from the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord had spoken to Joshua according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. Then Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant stood, and they are there till this day. So the priest who bore the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished, and the Lord commanded Joshua to speak to the people according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua, and the people hurried and crossed over. Then it came to pass, when all the people had completely crossed over the ark with the Lord, the priests crossed over in the presence of the people, and the men of Reuben, the men of Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh crossed over, armed before the children of Israel. You see, these are the folks, remember, that had made the promise with God, with Moses, that let us stay on the east side. But yet they crossed over, armed before the children of Israel. About 40,000 prepared for war, crossed over before the Lord for battle to the plains of Jericho. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moses all the days of his life. So, and here's where we'll have to end. There is a respect then for Joshua. What a commanding presence that he must have had. What a commanding position, because now all of a sudden they're holding him up and they're saying, look how great he is. And he has led us. He's a great leader. He's led us. He's done what he's supposed to. He's done what God has to do, and have been successful. And we are now in the promised land. Now remember, one of the things we need to point out, and I need to go back and look because I have failed to do that, and I can't remember the census of the number of people that crossed over, but it wasn't just one or two. And I'll try to look that up here in the next week or two. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So just think about that, let alone the others, but just think about 40,000 men. I don't think so. I think all. Yeah, I think all of it. Right. I think it was all of them myself. And that's why I need to go back and look at the census. But 40,000 soldiers. Yeah. But just think about 40,000 people, getting them across the Jordan River. That's I read a long time ago the amount of food that it took to feed the children of Israel while wandering in the wilderness. And it was train boxcars every day, several of them. And it's just astounding that God took care of them that way. I think it was all of them, Jim. I may be wrong, but that's just where I've always had my head. Anybody else? Or anybody want to say the other? It's fine. we'll try to study it together. And yeah, the 40,000, and that's where it is confusing to me, where it talks about the 40,000 men, the soldiers that crossed over. I do know that there is a wandering, or has been a wandering, one or two that I have seen in times past, that the 40,000 were from Manasseh and Gad and half-tribe. That was where the 40,000 came from.
They camped out in the 40,000 camped out in the plains of Jericho.
Okay.
What I read somewhere was that all of Israel crossed over,
Mm-hmm.
but since Jericho was almost 3 miles away,
Yeah.
men of war went there. They were the ones marched around.
That would fit. That would fit. In my scheme of thinking, that would fit. What is it? There's something that said. I'll have to go back and look. But yes, that would fit. That sounds very plausible to me. Anything else? All right. Well, we've got several missing. Adam's sick. George Coleman is sick.
Steve was outstanding in his field.
Steve was outstanding in his field. I think he's. I want to know, is he up creek without a paddle? But anyway, that's a whole different. When George first said it didn't dawn on me that was the water source. And then later, when he explained it, oh, okay, I got it now. So, anything else? Thing got on to me a couple weeks ago. She said, "You need to quit sooner." Yes, ma'am. All right, well, let's bow forward to prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're so thankful for this day, for the blessing of it, for the great story that we got to study tonight. It reminds us to trust in you, to rely upon you, to rest upon you, knowing that you will take care of us and that you'll watch over us. We ask that you be with us, be with those that we just talked about that are not doing well, and restore them back to their much normal health, much normal walks of life. Be with us as we go throughout the rest of this week. Help us to be individuals that are focused upon you, living for you, and represent you in a way that is pleasing in your sight and brings you glory and honor. Be with us now and hold us as we hold to you. For this is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen.